Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette. Discover the world. Guided travel since 1918.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Thursday here for our global travel update, coming to you this week from the Waldorf Astoria Hotel right here in Heliopolis. For those of you who know where that is, we're in Cairo. And of course, answering all your questions, so get them in. But we have a lot of stuff to talk about in the news this week, so let's go. And then I'll explain what we're doing. One of the reasons why we're in Cairo, we're here finishing my global television special, part of our series called Hidden Egypt. It'll be airing later this year. Just finished shooting today and then getting on another plane tonight and flying to an undisclosed location, which you'll discover next week for our next global travel update. But in the meantime, let's get to the news. The impact of the Trump immigration and deportation policies is having a direct effect on travel, your travel and mine, not to mention airfares. In the last 5 weeks, we've seen an actual drop of about 22% for foreign visitors to the United States. That's staggeringly high. And in some cases, even higher. Canadian travel to the US down 40%. And of course, now it's about to get worse because on the drawing board, you may have heard this story, the plans of the Trump administration to issue a ban to citizens of 43 separate countries, not allowing them to travel to the U.S. at all. Now, some of the countries on that list may not come as a surprise, Iran, Yemen, but some of them are a surprise. What is St. Lucia doing on that list? Or Bhutan? Crazy stuff. And we'll see what happens with that. But even the perception of that ban will trigger a drop in travel because the folks that are already not coming have told us they're not coming because they perceive America as being more or less unwelcoming. Now, how is that affecting your travel? Well, in the short term, an interesting development. If they're not coming to the U.S., that means there are empty seats going out of the country. Airfares have dropped precipitously. I may have mentioned this last week, but it bears repeating. For my team coming to Cairo for our show, they came from San Francisco. So San Francisco to Cairo, not the world's shortest flight. What do you think the airfare was? In coach, of course, but I'm going to tell you, fasten your seatbelts, $437. You can't go from New York to Milwaukee for $437. That'll give you an idea of the impact that's happening right now. Already 2 airlines, that's Southwest and Delta, have slashed their quarterly earnings projections by a half. Not a good sign about what's to come. So in the short term, it's a buyer's market. We found about 25 separate airfares from the U.S. to Europe for under $500 round trip. How long will that last? Probably till the end of this month. So if you're going to book something, book it now. So that's story number one that we're covering. Obviously, it's still developing, and we'll get back to you on that. But in the short term, it is a buyer's market. So if you want to act quickly, you benefit. Now, I'm going to show you a very funny commercial which has very much importance historically now. It dates back to 1972, and it's from an airline that's been in the news lately for another reason. But before I tell you the airline, let's watch the commercial.
Remember what it was like before there was somebody else up there who loved you? There was no such thing as executive class service to Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. With first-class legroom, free cocktails for everyone, and a schedule you could depend on. Remember?
Yeah, remember Southwest Airlines used to have no charges for checked bags, used to have open seating, used to have a better attitude. Well, guess what? Earlier last week, they dropped the bombshell. You know what it was. Effective May 28th, anybody flying on Southwest Airlines has to basically get to your wallet because no more free checked baggage. Now, you have to understand that the checked baggage deal on Southwest was what the airline marketed their entire airline around. It was their advertising policy. It was their marketing strategy. It was basically saying to their audience, we're not going to nickel and dime you. Please fly with us. Now, when the airline decided to do this, Wall Street was not very happy. In fact, they accused Southwest very angrily of leaving about $800 million of revenue on the table. But at the time, Chairman Gary Kelly said, you know what? We're willing to do that because we think that the baggage fees are such a negative touch point for airline passengers that people will just come to us. The needle will move in our direction. It'll be more than compensated for. And they were more or less right. But that was before a new investor group came in to take over basically most of the decision-making at Southwest Airlines. I call it the chief financial officer mentality. And they were more concerned with cost than value, more concerned with price than worth. And so what did they do earlier in the year? They announced the end of open seating. They announced 9 new boarding groups. Ring a bell to other airlines. They're putting in premium seats in the first part of the plane, which means you'll be paying a premium for that, hence the name premium seating. They've reduced the space between seats in the coach section, which means you'll be paying for those too because it's assigned seating. Not a happy moment. Well, what's the real reason for flying Southwest? It's not the food. It's not the rich Corinthian leather. It's not the Wi-Fi, which basically sucks on Southwest. You know what the reason really was? You knew that when you got to Southwest Airlines, you didn't have to go to your wallet. For a family of 4, let's do the math. If they only checked in 1 bag each, that means for every flight they took on Southwest Airlines, they saved $140. That's only 1 bag each. If it was 2 bags each, it was $280 and per direction. So it had a huge impact financially on people's decision-making about which airline they were going to fly. Now, here's the fun part. Within about 5 days of the Southwest announcement, as we were all recovering from this shock, Frontier Airlines made an announcement. Guess what? They're going to offer free bags. This is an airline that was never known for that, right? The ultra low-cost carrier model where you paid for everything short of breathing. Listen to our radio show day after tomorrow. We'll have on the Frontier CEO, Barry Biffle, with a very interesting discussion on why they're doing it and how they're doing it and what they think it's going to cause. So they wasted no time to try to fill that void. So we will see what happens and if the needle moves away from Southwest Airlines. Okay, moving along from that, we got a lot of other things to talk about. First of all, a little housekeeping note, but I'll give you the background first. It's 50 years ago, April 1975. The Vietnam War is coming to a very fast close. Saigon is about to fall. And in the midst of all that, within 3 days of the collapse of that government and the North Vietnamese coming in, they realized there were about 600 orphans, Vietnamese orphans who had been previously adopted out to U.S. parents, but they were still stuck in Vietnam. They had to get them out. And so the U.S. launched at the very last minute something called Operation Baby Lift to fly these kids out. And with their very young kids. Well, they were supposed to fly them out on hospital planes that were based at Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. At the last minute, those planes were told not to go. Somebody at Lockheed lobbied the Defense Department very convincingly to send the wrong plane, a C-5A cargo plane, a problematic plane to begin with, but a plane that was never designed for passengers. It was a cargo plane. But there was no time to lose. The plane showed up at Vietnam, and they loaded on all the kids. Keep in mind, there were no seats in most of the parts of that plane. In the upper deck, a couple of seats. But on the bottom deck, where they're throwing a couple of hundred kids, they had to bungee cord these kids into the plane's floor. And then the plane took off. I'm not going to tell you what happened next, but I ended up co-producing a special for ABC 2020 called What Happened to the Children. It's an amazing, a devastating, and an often tragic story. but it does have a happy ending for many of those kids. And for many of those kids, it doesn't. It ended up winning the Emmy Award for Best Investigative Reporting by a Television News Network. I'm happy to say I was the recipient of that award. But most importantly, on April 24th this year, it's coming up in just about a little bit more than a month. It's the 50th anniversary of Operation Baby Lift. We're doing a special event at the Pan Am Museum from the Pan Am Foundation in New York. And let me give you a surprise. About 100 of those kids, now in their 50s, are coming back for it to tell their stories. It's going to be amazing. It's all going to a good cause, as you can see. If you're anywhere near the New York area, I'll be the speaker that night, along with some very special guests that you can imagine and some that you can't even imagine. And I hope you'll join me that night, April 24th, coming up next month. Okay, now moving along. Lots of other things to talk about. But first, let's say hello to some folks here who have weighed in. I'm going to scroll down right now and say hello to them. Here we go. Priya saying hi from snowy Chicago. Yeah, leave it to Chicago to snow in March and April, right? I'm still expecting a snowstorm in New York in April, by the way. Lorena's saying hello from Lansing. And she's congratulating my Badgers. Yeah, they're playing today. In fact, I think they may be playing in about an hour. They made the bracket. At least they made the first 64. I think they're playing Montana today, and they better win. All right. Hello from Bellingham to Sue. Boston Bob, where the USA began, and I kicked cancer in the ass. Well, congratulations, Boston Bob. More power to you. Matthew saying greetings from Syracuse. Jeff is saying hello from the sunny Palm Desert. Gina's saying hi again from sunny San Diego. I know it's sunny today. Gary's saying hi from Jade and Gary in Montgomery, Alabama. Seeing sights from your Bloody Sunday video. Brenda Greensboro in Atlanta, heading to Selma and Birmingham. Yes, as you know, it was a major turning point in the civil rights movement in America along the Edmund Pettus Bridge on the march from Selma to Montgomery. We went back and did a half-hour television special for our show, The Travel Detective, on Alabama. And what you just saw there was from that special. I think we have it on our website. I hope those of you who haven't seen it will see it, because I got a chance to talk to the people many, many years later who lived that Bloody Sunday day across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and what it meant to them and ultimately what it meant to all of us. Colleen's saying, I'll be in Bologna, Italy in 10 days. Do you know any restaurant recommendations? The extraordinarily rainy weather there doesn't concern me, but maybe it should. No, it shouldn't. But I'll tell you what you need to do in Bologna. Go to the small town of Imola, not far from Bologna. In fact, I'll be there in May for guess what? For the other 250,000 people who will show up for what? The F1 in Imola. I can't wait to see that. Yeah. Want to see that again? Yeah. Okay. But I'll try to get you some restaurant recommendations. If you email me, peter@petergreenberg.com, we'll get them to you. Gary's saying, took a great tour with Jake Williams featured in your video. All right. There you go. Okay. All right, here we go. Gene saying, good morning from Tulsa. Born and raised in Madison, Wisconsin, so I love you already. Many of you know about my love affair with Madison, Wisconsin. I credit my entire career to that city because that's where I went to school, and that's where I became a journalist. Go Badgers, not just in basketball, but in life. Scott's saying, happy first day of spring, although you wouldn't know it in Chicago, right? Let's keep going here. What's going on here? I'm trying to get something here. How do here we go. Hold on. That's not working. So let's see what we can do. How do we do this? Hold on a second, guys. I'm losing the page here.
Just click on the...
On that?
A bit further.
Where?
No.
There?
No, on the yeah.
There we go. Now I'm back. Sorry about that. Camilla's saying hello from Tucson. Jim and Harriet saying hello from Richmond. You're late today. All right. Pat Cooney saying hello from Los Angeles. Theo says, anytime an investment group purchases a company, it is the kiss of death. I have witnessed several of these situations. I couldn't agree more. When the VC folks move in and they're more worried about making their, especially for publicly traded companies, and they're more worried about making their quarterly mark for the Wall Street analysts, guess what? Quality and service suffer. I've seen it time and time again in the hotel business. I've seen it now in the cruise ship business, and we're certainly seeing it more often than not in the airline business, aka Southwest. Remember, what's the unique selling proposition of an airline? Well, safety, of course, frequency, understanding what you need as a passenger, and not taking away your options. The true definition of luxury travel is having options, whether you use them or not. But when you wake up in the morning and find out that every one of your options has been taken away, how good do you feel about staying at that hotel or flying that airline or sailing on that cruise ship? When you commoditize travel to satisfy the CFO, that is the kiss of death. All right, Adrian saying good morning from Huntington Beach. Elizabeth saying, thank you for the weekly update. I'm traveling to Rome on September 2nd to the 20th. When should I purchase my ticket? Well, interestingly enough, you can do that ticket now because ticket prices fall off dramatically after the end of August. So, and by the way, if you do this with Google Flights or you do it with a few of the other websites like Hopper, they'll give you alerts if the fare drops even further, and you know how to play that game, right? If you bought a ticket today, let's say for $800, and it drops to $600, go ahead and cancel the $800 fare. You'll get a credit of $800, and then rebuy the ticket for $600 and keep that $200 credit. That's one of the ways you can play the game. Okay. Tayo says Southwest Airlines completely ruined their customer base with this move. Well, you know what? The airlines might argue otherwise, and I'll tell you why. And by the way, they might have a point, which is infuriating, but here it is. If you talk to the folks at Delta Airlines or American or United or Southwest, they will tell you, and they have some numbers to back it up, that you know what? It's not about choice. If you live in Atlanta, where the dominant airline is Delta, you're going to fly Delta no matter what. If you live in Chicago, you're going to fly United. If you live in Dallas, you're going to fly American. And if you live in St. Louis or near Midway Airport in Chicago and a few other destinations, you're going to fly Southwest because people pick for schedule and convenience. Service doesn't come first anymore because we've learned to not expect good service. So let's see what happens. But this one, I think there may be some immediate ramifications because the financial implications are so clear. Now, again, if you're flying Southwest before, or if you make a reservation for Southwest Airlines and before May 28th, then your bags will still fly free. But any reservation that is made after May 28th, that charge kicks in. So do the 9 boarding groups. That'll be fun. By the way, any airline that has 9 boarding groups, they should be more honest. Boarding group number 1 should be people with only personality disorders. Boarding group number 2 should be people who are on their meds. Boarding group number 3 should be people who are not on their meds. And then boarding groups 4 through 9 should just be people who act like children. At least you'd be more honest about it. Okay. Okay, here's one from Boston Bob who says, what is the best airline for me to book for Boston to Hawaii? I'm thinking May or June. I want to start traveling again now that I am cancer-free. Well, congratulations again on that, Bob. Here's the thing. I'm thinking that they may be canceling that nonstop Boston to Hawaii flight that was on from Hawaiian Airlines now that they're part of Alaska. I don't know if they've done that yet. We'll check into that for you. But I always like to get the longest part of the flight done first if it's not a nonstop. But in the case of Boston to Hawaii in May or June, then I would think of doing this. If there is no more nonstop, then I would maybe take United to Chicago, and then they take the United Chicago nonstop to Honolulu, right? There are some nonstops to Maui as well, but more prevalent to Honolulu. Okay. Scott says cost versus worth seems to be the theme of the year. Ditto. Our good friend John Lample, hi from Nice. I want John Lample's job. He travels more than I do, but you know what? I'm working. He's playing. John, we have to talk. All right? Listen to this. He's calling from the Nice Côte d'Azur Airport on BA to London. Okay, rub it in. Okay. Oh, speaking of London, something else I got to share with everybody here. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There's something called an ETA, and there's something called an ETIAS. The ETA is the electronic ticket authorization that is currently in effect, repeat, in effect if you're going to the United Kingdom, which means if you're flying into the United Kingdom and you're going to be staying there, I'm not saying transferring planes to the airport, but literally clearing passport control and going into the UK, you cannot do that without an ETA. It's an electronic visa. You have to apply for it online. You want to do that about 3 days before you get your ticket, so you have the visa number. Because if you don't have that visa number, you're not getting on the plane. And again, it's costing you about $13, and you're in. Now, if you're just changing planes at Heathrow or Gatwick, and you're not clearing passport control, you do not need the ETA. All right? You can just go right through, and your bags will be checked through. That's the deal. Now, the ETIAS is a little more problematic. That's the one that was instituted by the European Union, all those 26 countries, but it was supposed to go into effect July of 24. But by April of 24, they said they were postponing it till April of 25. Why? The Paris Olympics. They didn't want to mess people up. That's going to cost you about $10, and it applies to all European Union countries. So for those of you who are waiting for it to kick in this April, guess what? It's the can they keep kicking down the road. It's now been postponed again until sometime in 2026. So no worries here. You don't have to worry about getting it now. If you're going to any European Union country, you don't have to get the ETIAS. You don't have to spend the money. You can just go with your passport and be fine. All right. So don't worry about that. And there's every reason to suspect that when we get to April of 26, they'll kick it down the road again, which brings me up to the idea of real ID. How many people have heard about that? That's been kicking around since 2003 in the wake of 9/11 and the push to get more verification of your ID on a government issued document. In this case, your driver's license. It was supposed to go into effect right after that. It didn't. It was then supposed to go into effect in 2015. By the way, that's 10 years ago, and it didn't. And every year it got kicked down the road, kicked down the road, kicked down the road. You'd have to go to the DMV, your Department of Motor Vehicles, and get them to put a certain little gold star on your driver's license that would say to any airport security person, otherwise known as the TSA, that you are who you say you are. Well, guess what? It got kicked down the road until May of this year, which is supposed to go into effect. Well, maybe, because they've now issued guidance to all the TSA folks that they're not going to be enforcing it until July. So they're kicking it partially down the road already. Now, if you're watching me and you have a valid U.S. passport, you do not need real ID. Your valid U.S. passport takes the cake for that. But if you don't have a passport or you want a second form of approvable ID, maybe this is the year they're going to kick it in after waiting for what, 22 years? But anyway, now you know the timetable, so to speak, for that. All right, let's keep going here. John Baldastri, my buddy from United in Newark. Hello, John. Here's one from Kay who says, hi there from snowy Joliet, Illinois. Can't wait to see your show. Yep, that'll be coming up in the fall. But speaking of our show, that's Hidden Egypt. But speaking of our other shows, we already have on the air right now. It's on PBS, Amazon Prime, and Apple TV Plus, Hidden Uganda. And here's a little tease.
Get set for a very special journey deep into the heart of Africa, to a place most people have never experienced. I'm Peter Greenberg, and join me as we navigate a country where old rhythms live on and ancient instruments create modern sounds. A land of distant wonders and the promise of endless bounties, and all still waiting to be discovered. Welcome to Hidden Uganda.
So check your local listings, as they say. And then later this year, our new show, Hidden Alabama, shows up. Then Hidden Egypt, followed by Hidden Hong Kong and Hidden Malta. We have a very full schedule, which means, of course, we'll be in all those places and probably broadcasting our global travel update from there as well. Speaking of being in all those places, for those of you who've been following my schedule this year at all the travel and adventure shows throughout the United States, the next one for me is coming up in about a week. It's on March 28th and 29th. There it is, March 29th and 30th. March 29th and 30th in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Convention Center. I'll be speaking there please come and see me. Happy to see you, and also happy to answer all your questions when we're there as well. We always have a good time, and I hope to see you there. There are some discount tickets, I think. If you just go to Greenberg VIP, when you sign up, you get your tickets. Please come see me. I'll be glad to see you there. Okay, moving right along. I want to show you a picture. This one cracks me up. But before we show the picture, I'm going to set the scene. There's a woman, passenger, on a British Airways plane who goes to the lavatory on a 747. And she's shocked when she opens the door. Show the picture. Now, it's a beautiful bathroom, isn't it? I mean, compared to a 737 MAX lavatory where you can't even change your mind in there, you've got some space, right? She writes a letter of complaint. What about? The windows. She says, I have no privacy. I don't want anybody seeing me here. British Airways writes her back and says, darling, if anybody can see you in there at 35,000 feet, they deserve to see everything. Who's going to be looking in at 35,000 feet? All right. Anyway, just thought I would share that with you because some people will complain about anything. I love the idea of windows in the bathroom, right? There you have it. All right. Okay. Get rid of the picture. I just wanted to share that one with you. All right. Now, moving right along, let's say hello to some other people here. Oh, this thing came up again. How do I fix this? There we go. I've got it fixed. Let's keep scrolling down. Linda's saying, returning to Egypt in November for 5 days, then on to Luxor to go to the Gem. Can you share any hidden Cairo now? Yeah, I can, but I'm not gonna. Why would I do that? It's part of the show, right? Remember, the concept of all of our hidden shows is no gift shop, no tour bus, no brochure, no guidebook, and no TripAdvisor stickers, which I hate anyway. I'm taking you to the most extraordinary experiences in a country that nobody knows, but that are all accessible to you. So bear with me on that, and I hope you get a chance to see the show. And you're going at the right time of the year, by the way, and you'll enjoy it a lot. All right, let's keep going here. All right. Jim and Harry say it's a golden opportunity for other carriers like Breeze to step in on the baggage. You know what? They might just do that. But listen in for my interview on Saturday, day after tomorrow, with the CEO of Frontier Airlines, Barry Biffle, to hear his reasoning why he jumped in so quickly to make the baggage deal offer to passengers. Okay. Judy wants to know, what are the requirements to enter Japan? Last time I looked, you still need a visa, but I think you can do it electronically. I'll find out more about that, and we'll get you that answer next week, okay? Okay. Is it true that if you're traveling from another country and have multiple visas, you can't come to the U.S.? I didn't know that. Look, it's a very fluid situation right now as to what U.S. Border Patrol and Customs or U.S. Border Protection and Customs is doing for visitors coming to the United States, and what constitutes a reason for not letting you come in. You know, in a world of free speech, and I'm not going to get political here, but then again, I will. Can we turn the light back on here?
No, it's just the electricity.
Oh, guess what? We just had a little power failure here in Cairo, so we'll do this in the dark. Hey, and it's back. All right. As I was saying, in the world where free speech still prevails, we think, if I say that I'm not happy with a governor or a senator or a president, that's in the course of normal conversation. I'm not yelling fire in a crowded theater. I'm not advocating for the assassination of anybody or anybody being hurt or injured or killed. So if you're visiting the United States and on your cell phone, you have messages back and forth to friends of yours saying that you're not happy with something going on in the United States, does that now label you a terrorist? It's a question that's now being asked after at least one or two people have been turned back from coming in because the officials wanted to examine the messages on their cell phone. We got a problem here, folks. And forgetting the fact that they may institute this ban on 43 countries, we have a ban on common sense here, apparently. We'll be talking about that in the days and weeks to come because it's not an issue that's going to go away quickly. And while it may benefit us in the short term for our own personal travels with discounted fares, what does that say about us to the rest of the world. And we should be talking about that. Again, I'm not being political. The beauty of travel is that it breaks down barriers. It opens borders. I'm not going to sing Kumbaya either, but it does promote understanding and common ground. And the minute we shut that off, we're doing a lot of damage in more ways than you can imagine. All right. I'm telling you this not for political reasons. I'm just telling you this as an experienced traveler and also as a citizen of the United States. Let's go to some of your questions that you asked earlier in the week. Ann says, is it better to purchase annual multi-trip travel insurance or individual policies for each trip? Well, depends on how often you're going to be traveling. But if you're like me, I do an annual policy. And I'm talking about a medical evacuation and repatriation insurance. It's an annual policy of about $800. They also have family policies. And the good news is you don't have to think about it every time you travel. You're already covered. All right. MedJet Assist does that. Allianz does that. Travel Guard does that, and many others. But as I've always said, and I will continue to say, do not buy any of this insurance without going through a travel advisor or a travel agent who can interpret the hieroglyphics of policy language so you know what you're covered for, and most importantly, what you're not covered for, or you may be buying worthless coverage. Okay? Jamie says, is Southwest Airlines turning into Spirit Airlines? Well, you know what? I'm going to give you guys a surprise. The number one on-time airline in America right now, it's not Delta, it's not United, and it's certainly not American, and it's definitely not JetBlue. It's actually Spirit. So there's a lot to be said for that. Look, when you start making nickel and diming part of your corporate philosophy, as far as I'm concerned, you lose me. You lose me. It's a mini bar mentality at hotels. It's the same thing. It's a resort fee mentality at hotels. Same exact thing. All right. So now Southwest Airlines apparently doesn't care. They just want the revenue and they think you're going to have to live with it. Let's see what happens. Okay. Kyle says, what's the best way to find travel deals these days for airfare prices? Well, I'm going to give you a little hint. 98% of you who are watching me right now go online to make your airline reservations. I think that's a mistake. I think 98% of you should go online to research airfare prices, but not necessarily to buy them online. Pick up the phone, call the airline, call a travel advisor, call a travel agent. Why? Because you're not seeing the full inventory. What they're seeing on their screen is definitely not what you're seeing on your screen. They're getting a much bigger picture with more options and more choices, right? Some of which you haven't even imagined. What's the problem of picking up the phone and having a phone call? Having a conversation with a human being. What a concept. So Kyle, to answer your question is, you start by researching online, but you don't necessarily buy online after you make that phone call and see what your options really are. How many of you have gone online to see only 3 seats left, only 2 rooms left? Total lie. Total lie. Because what you're really seeing is only 3 seats left in the allocation that online travel agency was given by the travel provider. There may be so many seats open on the plane, you go bowling on the plane, but you don't know that. So you panic, hit the keystroke and think you've done something great, when in fact you may have denied yourself all the other information you need about other flights you didn't even see on your screen, or other rooms or hotels you didn't see on your screen. Please have that conversation. Okay. Leanne says, I noticed that the cost of my airplane ticket went down since I bought it. Will the airline refund me? Well, Leanne, let's talk about this. What you didn't tell me is, how much did it go down? $20 or $200? If it went down $200, I think I answered this before, but I'll say it again. Why don't you, but you have to move quickly, go out and buy another ticket at the lower price, but first cancel the first ticket, get a credit, and then apply that credit against the lower price and still get a credit. If it's just $20, don't bother. Okay. Sarah says the Dominican Republic safe right now. I'm worried about what happened to that girl on spring break. Okay. Can we put this in perspective? There's now mounting evidence that the girl who disappeared drowned. You can do that in your bathtub in Cleveland. That doesn't stop me from going to the Dominican Republic. In fact, let me explain something. The worst 4-letter word that starts with F in travel is fear. And you can thank the U.S. State Department for those State Department advisories to basically continuing that fear. How many of you have actually read a State Department advisory in full? And then if you've read it, it makes a lot of sense. Not because we're painting with too broad a brush. Look, how many Americans have been killed? American tourists have been killed by acts of violence or crime in the last 23 years. Anyone want to guess? It's about 805, more or less. Okay? Now, let me put that in perspective. Every single week in this country, 1,100 Americans are either injured seriously or killed in accidents in their own bathtubs. So for anybody who says to me, oh, I don't want to go there, it's not safe, I'm going to stay home, you know what my answer is? You can do that, but if you do that, you're on your own. Please put things in proper perspective. Now, there are certain places I wouldn't go, and those are the places where no one's in control. We've talked about this on the show before. But for everybody else, you know what? Common sense prevails. I'm going. Okay. Here we go. Are there concerns? Oh, this is from Nana. Are there concerns on the Galapagos Islands over the number of visitors, particularly as there is now an airport? There's been an airport in the Galapagos for years. I've flown out of there. But it's severely restricted in the amount of traffic they're allowed to take. In fact, the airport is only open a certain few hours a day. They close the airport every night. So it's not like, it's not nonstop, number one. It's not chaotic. Ecuador right now, I have to say, is a very good example of where government has been acting responsibly to protect the environment. They have severe limitations on the number of visitors. They have severe limitations on the cruise ships that are down there. There's not a single ship down there that is allowed to take more than 100 passengers. And it has to be an all Ecuadorian crew and officers. Local knowledge is key. If you're going ashore on a raft, no more than 16 people at a time with an experienced guide. I mean, I'm telling you, they do their homework there and they should be applauded for it. And the environment reflects that care and concern. So there's no sudden swarm of people to the Galapagos. It's been limited since the 1950s when it was established as a national park and nature reserve, okay? So that they should be basically a role model for other locations around the world. Okay, now let us go. Elizabeth says, okay, thank you for the things. Oh, we did that one. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. Let me scroll down and see some other people here. Now we're scrolling down. Okay. Wendy says, what's the best time to buy airfare for a trip into Dublin and out of London in mid-October? You can do that now. The tickets have been priced very low. They go down around the 15th of September. So you're traveling at the right time of the year. But keep in mind, and you're doing something smart, what I would do, if you want to do something even smarter, you said you're going to Dublin and coming back from London. If you do it the other way, you'll save money because of the UK airport user tax. Anybody leaving a UK airport pays a really stiff tax. It's basically part of your ticket price, but you don't know that, right? But if you go to Dublin and maybe take a train or maybe sneak in another way by boat into London, then you're not going to an airport. And then you're flying from the UK and you're not taxed. Right? So London first, right? Because you're not leaving London, then to Dublin, then flying home from Dublin, you'll be fine. Hello from Alabama for Katrina. Gina says, I like using the UK or Canadian travel advisories in addition to the US. Yes, I did give that tip a while back. I go beyond that. I also use the British Foreign Office travel advisories to their citizens. And then I go one step further. Just about anywhere you want to go in the world, there's a reasonably good chance there's an English language newspaper there, either a daily or a weekly. You can access that online, get the last 30 days of issues, read them, and then you can make an informed decision between that and the other advisories given by other governments as to whether you want to go or not. That's what I would do. Okay. All right. Let's see what we have here. We did that one and we did that one. We're doing very well today. Now let's go to the photo of the week. Speaking of the UK, of course, where is this photo taken? Come on. First of all, Red Guevara, congratulations. It's a 14th century castle in a fairy tale town you can easily visit just a short train ride south of Dublin. And of course, what he also says is right. If you're coming home from Ireland, guess what? You pre-clear. That means you pre-clear U.S. Customs. By the way, pre-clearance has been around since 1952, started in Canada. It's been in Ireland for years. It's also in the Bahamas. It's also in Bermuda. It's even in Abu Dhabi. And that means when you get on the plane or before you get on the plane to come home, you clear U.S. Customs in that country. There are U.S. Customs officers based there. You're already cleared so that when you land back in the U.S., whether your first stop is where your destination is going to be or your connecting flights, you're not waiting 4 hours in line at customs. You've already cleared. Your bags immediately connect, or you go right home. The best thing that's ever done by Customs and Border Protection other than global entry. Two great programs I support a lot. All right. Couple of little housekeeping notes. Again, our show this Saturday coming to you from Scottsdale, Arizona. Don't forget to listen in for our interview with Barry Biffle of Frontier on what he's doing to sort of poke a little fun at Southwest, but also pick up a lot of market share by offering free check bags. Interesting story there. Of course, we'll see you next week from a different remote, I'll say that again, a different remote location. And you couldn't get more different than Cairo than we are right now. I want to thank Andreas Jezerbach, who's the GM here, longtime guy, celebrating his 50th year at Hilton. Andreas, thank you so much for letting us stop here at the Waldorf here in Heliopolis in Cairo. We'll see you on that show end of this year. In the meantime, we'll see you in Scottsdale on Saturday. We'll see you in Washington, D.C. on the 29th and 30th. And we'll see you next week for Global Travel Update from a truly surprise location when you get out the map. Let's put it this way. It is not a short flight from where I am right now, guaranteed. Everybody, thanks a lot. Anthony, thanks for doing the boards. Anthony's also here in Cairo at another location. We appreciate that. And we'll see you in a couple of days with another Global Travel Update from somewhere else around the world. Bye, everybody.
Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette. Discover the world. Guided travel since 1918.